Hi guys, welcome to my channel. My name is Watch Arne, and today we are going to be looking at part 1 of my Botania series. So if you're not familiar with it, Botania is a really awesome mod that basically you are a botanist. It's kind of using tech and magic all into one using flowers, and it's actually one of my favorite mods. Now this is part 1 of this series, and this is going to be a multi-part series. This episode is all about getting started and an entry into Botania. I'm going to teach you everything you need to know without any waffle. But if you do have any questions, then please do join my Discord. There'll be a link down below to that, where we have nearly 2,000 at the time of recording other modded Minecraft players, and I have a whole team, including myself of course, that will help you with any server issues, Java issues, modded Minecraft issues, even vanilla issues, plugin issues, anything you need at all, we will help you. So without further ado, don't forget to subscribe, by the way. Let's get into it. So this is being filmed on the latest version at the time of filming, which is 1.19.2. There may be some slight differences if you are on a different version of Minecraft. However, I've looked through and there really isn't that many changes. If you do, again, have any comments or questions, etc., and there's something that seems different, then just let me know down below in the comments or join my Discord, because there may be a few differences. So the first thing you're going to need is a Lexica Botania. Now, this is basically your Wikipedia for Botania, but I would recommend watching my videos because it's not laid out in the most amazing way. So to make the Lexica Botania, you are going to want to use a sapling with a book like this. Now, you can actually rename these in an anvil if you would like to call it something cool. And then also another cool feature about it is any Botania block, like these mystical flowers, I can sneak and right click and actually it will take me straight to that entry. So if you are playing on a server with other people, or you're just looking at random items of Botania and you want to see what they do, you can, get your Lexica Botania and right click it and then see what the hell your friends have made, for example. So mystical flowers. These are the first thing that you're going to come across apart from the Lexica Botania, and mystical flowers are found all over the world. They are in most biomes and they come in 16 different colors, which is every single color that you of course get in Minecraft. Now, you can get double height versions of these, and you will see these semi-rarely, and you can see these here. So each color has a double height variant. Now, if you want to grow these yourself, you can just click them with bone meal like this, and it will double height them. Now, there is another way you can get double height ones, and that is by planting petals in the ground. Now, to get the petals, you're going to want to just left click to harvest them, and then you're going to want to put them in your crafting table like this, and you're going to get 2 petals per flower, okay? If we then put them back in the crafting table again, you're then going to get the corresponding color of dye. Now, I don't care too much about the dye right now, but what I'm going to do is take these petals and I'm going to plant them in the ground. And you can see that there is some sparkly effects here. Now, if we bone meal that is then going to get us a double height one. So if you are needing a specific color of flower, this is a really good way to farm them early on. Now, another way to farm flowers is by using something called floral fertilizer. Now, if we look at how to make that, it is going to be 1 bone meal and 4 of any corresponding dye. Any colored dye at all, mix and match, that's going to make you some floral fertilizer. If we use floral fertilizer on the ground, you can see that these beautiful particles are going to appear and some Botania flowers are going to begin to grow. So if you're at this point and you've already got some farm set up for collecting dyes, then you actually, and bone meal, so if you've got a mob farm and some sort of dye farm, I guess a mob farm would do it anyway with the bone meal and white dye, you can basically set up a manual unlimited flower farm just like that, so you don't have to go out looking for them. You can also put 9 petals into a block like this, and it will be very pretty looking. And another thing that you can do that it doesn't really tell you in the book under the mystical flowers is that you can get one of the flowers like this and use 2 glowstone with it to get a glimmering one. Now, a glimmering one, as you can see here, provides light. It's basically a light source, and these can be really, really nice for decorating your base. Now that we have actually gotten some flowers, you may be thinking, God, these are getting really difficult to store and, carry around with me. So what you're going to want to make is a flower pouch. And the way to make this is with some wool and any type of petal or flower or mushroom from Botania. And the flower pouch in 1.19.2 has a slot for each color. And you can see that when you pick up the flowers, you can see I've picked up a tall mystical yellow flower and a mystical white flower. And, you know, I can put these straight in here. It can store a stack of each color and height of flower. Now, in the older versions of Botania, if you're playing on 1.12, etc., I'm pretty sure that it's just a two-row inventory, and it can be mix and match, so you can have like 5 stacks of yellow and none of anything else, etc. I can't quite remember, but I think that's a bit of a difference there from older versions, if I remember correctly. Now that we have actually gone out and gotten all of our flowers, we've got our petals, etc., we're going to actually want to do something with them. So what you're going to want to make is a Petal Apothecary. Now, to make this, you are going to want to use a petal and some cobblestone like this, and you can place them in the world. There are different variants made of different materials, and what you can do is you can actually use it as a brazier. So I can use a lava bucket like this, and I can throw anything in and incinerate it. And the main reason you're going to want it is water. Now, you are going to have to keep filling this up every time, but there are ways that you can automate this using, you know, droppers, and you can basically fill it by any means that you need to. And what you're going to do is you're going to put petals in here. Now, this is how we're going to make flowers. So the way Botania works is it works off mana. Mana is the kind of electricity or resource that you're going to be using, and there is something called generating flora, which is flowers that generate mana, and then there is functional flora, and they are flowers that use mana to do something. They're productive flowers, and you're going to make all of those flowers in the Petal Apothecary. So the first one you're going to want to make is the pure daisy, and we're going to right click it like this. And we're going to throw them in using Q like this. And in case you've put the wrong thing in, you can right click it like that to get the last thing you put in back out. So if I put in 4 white petals, you can see that a tick mark has come up and it shows you what you can make. Now, again, I can right click this to take out the last placed item. And what we're going to then do, because you know that you've got the right recipe, is we're going to throw in some seeds, and it's always going to be seeds. Any type of vanilla seeds will do, and that is going to complete the process. The seed acts as a catalyst. There we go. And we have got a pure daisy. Now, what the pure daisy can do is if we place it down and then we get some oak logs and some stone, we can see that we can place the stone and the logs around it like this in any manner, doesn't matter how, and you can see these really cool particles. Now, we're going to wait a little bit, and it's actually going to transform these logs and this stone into... Here's some I made earlier. It takes about 10-20 seconds, and it's going to turn the stone into living rock, and it's going to turn the wood into living wood logs. And again, you could use block breakers and places to automate this, or any other means. So now that we have these, the next thing we're going to want to do is make a wand of the forest. And that is going to be made using some twigs from the living wood logs. So here's what I made earlier. This is a wand of the forest. You're going to want to use 3 living wood twigs and any petals of your choosing. And that is actually going to affect the color of the petals here. The way you make the twigs is simply 2 of the living wood diagonally like this. Now, with our wand of the forest, this kind of acts as our botanical wrench, if you will. And you can shift right click to change it from function mode to bind mode. Now, function mode doesn't actually do much, but it does have a few cool uses. It's going to free up the sneak function. And if we place a chest down like this and put it into function mode, we can actually shift right click it on the top of this chest, and it's going to rotate it. And that will actually work with a lot of blocks. So it's actually got a really cool function there. You can also use it with a dispenser. Holding a wand will use the wand on the block it currently faces when triggered. So that could be useful in some situations as well. Now, if we do it into bind mode, what you're basically going to do is you're going to shift right click the mana pool, for example, and it will say whether you're putting mana in or mana out. And it can basically bind 2 things together. And that's going to be really useful when we are transferring mana around and things like that. Which brings us to the next item, which is going to be the mana pool. Now, the mana pool comes as the mana pool. There is the everlasting guilty pool, which is a creative one. And you may see in some mod packs that, this is one of the end goals often of a mod pack is, you have to make the creative items. The everlasting guilty pool is often one of those. There is also the diluted mana pool, which is basically half the size of a normal mana pool. And that is used with slabs. And then there's the fabulous mana pool, which is made with shimmer rock, or you can again make a fabulous mana pool with Bifrost block. And we're going to get into a lot later in this series how to make Shimmerrock and Bifrost block, but those are the ones. The fabulous ones are the best, apart from the creative one. Now, the normal mana pool is simply going to be used like this with Living Rock. Now, what the mana pool does is it basically stores all of your mana. Think of it, if you're using technology, like a battery. Now, the next things we're going to look at is actually how to start making mana or generating mana with generating Flora. And then we're also going to look at how we can move that mana around. So first things first is we're going to look at the generating Flora. We need to actually generate some mana. Now, the first two flowers that I would recommend would be the Endoflame or the Hydrangeas. Okay, I think I pronounced that correctly. So the Endoflame is going to use any sort of combustible material, and basically you can just drop coal on it, for example. And you can set up a system with droppers and pressure plates so that it automatically continues to drop coal on it. And some people, in fact, a lot of people, will actually just use Endoflames for their entire Botania journey. My personal favourite is the Rosa Arcana. The Hydrangeas use water around them. But I'm going to go through all of them and how they work for you now so you can make a choice. But the first one you probably will be looking at is the Endoflame. If you go into your Lexica Botania, you can see in the categories here there is generating Flora, and that is where all of these are going to be. So at the top here, we have the Dandelion. Now, this is actually a game of life. This is a bit crazy, and I've never done this all myself, but it's actually a whole game. And I will put a picture here for you. So it's likely to be the most efficient available one, but it's the least straightforward to use. It's a cellular automation known as Conway's Game of Life, and there's a 25 by 25 square centered around the Dandelion. And basically, as long as the flower receives a redstone signal, it'll step the automation twice a second. Each location within the flower's 25 by 25 area of effect counts as a cell, and cells may be alive or dead. A cell counts as alive if its respective block is a cellular block, or dead if it's anything else. The neighbors of a cell are the 8 cells surrounding any cell, right? Okay, yep, so the 8 around any cell are the neighbors of a cell. Every step of the game, the following transition happens to each cell simultaneously. Any live cell with exactly 2 or 3 live neighbors survives the step. Any live cell not satisfying condition 1 becomes dead, and any dead cell with exactly 3 live neighbors becomes a live cell. Aside from those, a few additional rules not present in a typical simulation of Conway's Game of Life are also present in the Dandelion procedures listed in the following pages. And then I'm not going to get into that, but this is how you make it. You're going to want to use some green, lime, purple petals of a Gaia spirit and some runes. Now, obviously, we haven't got into how to make runes or a Gaia spirit yet. This is one of the later stages of generating Flora. This is a very complicated one. Let's just stick with the... it's confused me so much, the Endoflames. Let's just stick with those. So the Endoflame is the simplest one, and that is going to be used with 2 brown petals, 1 light grey, and 1 red. So just how we made our pure daisy, you're going to want to throw those petals into your Petal Apothecary, and then you're going to throw a seed in at the end, and you will get an Endoflame. What you can also do is throw that in, and then if we get a bucket of water, you can right-click with an empty hand to add back the last recipe. So if I just right-click here, it's going to put that all back in again, and we can make another one. That is another great tool that you can use if you're making a lot of things, for example, the Endoflame. And if you ever need to know how, again, it's in here. In your Lexica Botania is the petals, etc. required for each one. So I'm only going to go over now basically what each one does. The Endoflame, like we said, is going to use any combustible material, and that's what we're going to be using for this tutorial. So I'm going to put a few here like this, and then we can throw the coal on like that, and you can see that they're eating up the coal. You can see that they are literally eating it up. Now, there is also the Entropinium, and this is going to generate a blast of mana. In fact, you need to use TNT near this to activate it. And that is basically, yes, it's going to basically store, it's going to make mana from explosions. There is the Gormalisis, and that is using food to generate mana. Then you have the Hydrangeas, and these are going to act as a liquid-based passive, so they suck up any still water in a 3x3 area at the same altitude. So you don't put them above the water, you put them on the same Y level that the water block is in, and they actually function faster during the rain. However, their mana output is still slow, and they decay after 3 days. The Endoflames do not decay. So if you're thinking, oh, I'll just use water, it's renewable, the Hydrangeas will die out, so it's not the best option. I personally don't bother with them. There's the Kikimurus, and that likes cake, basically. There's the Munch Stew, and this is actually going to use other living materials like leaves, saplings, or other items will not be dropped from the leaves. But it does output a hefty sum of mana per tree's worth of leaves. So this could be a really useful one to make. You are going to need a Rune of Gluttony, though. Then we've got the Narslimus. This is going to use slimes. And then there is the Rafflesia. Oh, I don't know this one. It will eat man-made flowers. Interesting. Okay. The Rosa Arcana is a really cool one. This uses experience points. If you can find a way, using generally other mods, to basically throw out loads of XP, the Rosa Arcana can be amazing. So if you have some sort of mob farm that's generating XP, and you're going to use pedestals or some way to generate, to transfer XP to where the Rosa Arcana is and drop all of that XP, this is the way to go. This is my favorite. Then we have the Shulk Me Not, and this is going to use the power of the Shulker's levitation. If a nearby monster is targeted by and hit by the Shulker's projectile, and the internal buffer is empty, both the mob and the Shulker will be killed, generating ludicrous amounts of mana from the process. That seems like a very difficult way to set up, but, you know, there's the Spectralus, and this is fond of the various hues of wool. It will consume all and any wool. And then you have the Thermalily, and this likes lava. So it's the lava counterpart to the Hydrangeas. Again, these are all really well documented with the recipes in the Lexica Botania. So if you're really interested in one of the ones I've just mentioned, go into here and look how you make it. You can look really into the finer detail, but that's a general overview on what each one does. Now, if you're thinking, how do I get these runes? Because some of them need petals and runes. We are going to get into runes shortly. So once you've started making some mana, you're then going to want to actually move it around. And the way that we're going to do that to start with is using a mana spreader. You can see here, there is the mana spreader, which is going to use some of that living wood that we made earlier with our pure daisy. And then we're going to use one petal, any petal, and a gold ingot. That's going to make a mana spreader. You can also make a pulse one, which kind of is self-explanatory with some redstone dust. And then there's the elven one, which is a better one. And then there's the Gaia one, which is even better. There's also a spreader turntable as well that you can get. And the spreader turntable basically is going to continually rotate a mana spreader placed upon it. Placing the spreader on a turntable will set it spinning. And a redstone signal will pause it. So you can also change the speed of it, right-clicking it with a wand of the forest, and sneak right-clicking it will change its direction. I've never used this before myself, but there could be some cool stuff you could do with that. So, right, we're going to place the mana spreader. Here we go. And we're going to put the wand of the forest into bind mode. And if we right-click it, it's going to update it. Now, if we shift right-click the Endoflame like this, you can see it's highlighted. And we can then shift right-click the mana spreader. Same again to the mana spreader. Same again to the mana spreader. And basically, you can keep right-clicking on here and you can see how much mana is in the bar. And then you can see how much is in the mana spreader. And you can see here, the mana spreader is shooting out mana to nowhere. So what we're going to want to do here, you can see it's full of mana. We're going to want to shift right click the mana spreader and then bind that to the mana pool. And you can then see that the mana spreader is shooting its mana into the mana pool. Now, if you're sitting here for ages thinking this isn't filling up, it is. These store an extortionate amount of mana. You are going to want to automate this and have it running all the time. Now, if you hover over something like this, I'm hovering over the Sendo Flame, you can see the mana spreader is lit up. However, here nothing is lit up because it's showing you what it is bound to. And that is how we're going to transfer mana around in the early stages. Now, once we have made some mana, we've generated some mana, we're sending it into our mana pool, etc. The next thing we're going to want to do is actually use that mana. Now, before we get into generating Flora, I think now is a really good time to start talking about how to make those runes that we saw earlier, and that is going to be done in the runic altar. Now, to make the runic altar, it's pretty simple. You are going to want to use some living rock, and then you're going to need a mana diamond or a mana pearl. Now, if you're thinking, well, how do I make those? A mana pearl is simply throwing a mana diamond is simply throwing a diamond into the mana pool, and you get a mana diamond. This here shows how much mana it's going to need. The same with an ender pearl. You can throw it in, and it shows you here how much mana you're going to need, and you get a mana pearl. Literally, just throw it in. You can see the tick mark there. If there is no tick box on here, you don't have enough mana in. And you can just simply throw it in like that, and then you're going to get that back. And in case you didn't see before, again, the runic altar is going to use one of these with some living rock around it. Again, you can highlight this and sneak right-click with your Lexica Botania to see about this item. So, now that we have our runic altar, we're going to actually want to see what it can do. Now, if I sneak right-click, again, we're going to go through the Lexica Botania entry. So this is how you're going to make your runes. You want to point, using bind mode if you're Wander the Forest, your mana spreader at the runic altar. And basically, where the Petal Apothecary uses seeds as a catalyst, this is going to use living rock, which is what we made earlier with the pure daisy. This is going to use living rock as the catalyst, and then you're just going to use the other ingredients to make runes. There are 16 runes in total, and you have the 4 elements, then you have the 4 seasons, and then the 7 deadly sins, and there's also a separate rune of mana that exists. You can also right-click the runic altar with an empty hand while it is not accepting mana, and that'll pull the last item out, just like the Petal Apothecary. And then you can also attach a comparator, and that will emit a signal strength of 1 if the altar is accepting mana, and signal strength of 2 if it's ready to craft the rune. Now, these are the recipes for the runes. You're, just like the Petal Apothecary, going to want to put your items in. So for a rune of water, you're going to need a mana steel ingot, a mana powder, a fishing rod, a sugarcane, and bone meal. Now again, mana steel ingot is an iron ingot in the mana pool to get a mana steel ingot, and the same with mana powder. It's sugar or a dye, and you're going to get 1 mana powder, and that again is by putting it into the mana pool. Then we've got the rune of earth, the rune of air, fire, spring, summer, autumn, winter. Then there's the rune of mana. And then you've got lust, gluttony, greed, sloth, wrath, envy, and pride. So these are all the runes you can make. And you can see they're all pretty simple recipes. A few of them can be a bit annoying. Whereas the 7 deadly sins ones are actually going to use, fire and water. So fire and summer, etc. with other components. So it's a multi-step process for making those ones. But they are the end game runes. Now, that is how you make the runes in the runic altar. So when you put these in, you want to bind a mana spreader to it, and it will be quite obvious when you have received enough. For example, we are going to make a rune of wrath, I think. So we're going to put in our rune of winter, our rune of earth, and 2 mana diamonds. And can you see the little circle going around? That is the progression on how much mana it's receiving. And then, ta-da, it's all ready. And you can see when it's ready, quite obviously. And again, when you approach it, the circle is complete. And then you are going to want to right-click it, not throw it, but right-click it with a living rock, like that. Then you're going to want to right-click it. So you do get your runes back, actually. That's a fact. You do get your runes back. So you're going to want to right-click it. And again, what we can do here is right click it with an empty hand to get the last recipe. Ta-da! You can see the circle going round as long as there's enough mana. Then we are going to want to put in the living rock here and then right click it with your wand to complete the process and you get your runes. Fantastic. So now that we know how to make runes, now that we've got some mana being generated, we want to actually use that mana. And this is where we're now going to get to functional flora. So earlier we went through the generating flora. Well, now this is the functional flora, the flowers that are actually going to do cool stuff. These flowers are actually going to be automatically draining mana from a nearby mana pool. Okay, you don't have to bind them. They will automatically take the closest mana pool and they will steal all that mana. But they only will bind, like it says here, to one mana pool at a time. And if none were in range, then you should rebind them with the wand, but you shouldn't need to if there's already one nearby, if that makes sense. And then you can also use a redstone root in their creation to be able to toggle them with redstone. And a redstone root is just with some grass or a fern and some redstone dust like this. So you can also shrink them, which might sound a bit crazy. It's not just for aesthetics. It's actually going to reduce the effect of them. So if you're making a generating flora and you're like, do you know what, it's doing too much. You're just doing too much and you want to reduce its effect, you can actually put it in the mana pool with something called an alchemy catalyst. So there are actually two different kinds of catalysts you can make. The first one is the alchemy catalyst, which is from 4 living rock, some gold and brewing stands, etc. And what we can use that with is, for example, you know, putting andesite into diorite, putting block of blaze quartz into blaze quartz, a blaze rod into netherwart. And there's a lot of really cool recipes that you can, you know, transmute things into different things. Now, the way you're actually going to put this is quite literally underneath your mana pool like this. That's how you're going to use it. It's going to go under there. And now this can be used as a catalyst. Then there is also the conjuration catalyst. And that's going to use some elementium and pixie dust. And we'll get into how to make these in a later video. This is a more late game one. And the uses for this is, you know, acacia leaves into other leaves, coal into 2 coal, 1 glowstone into 2 glowstone. So using mana, you can actually increase the quantity of things. There are a few ways you can also change the interaction of how flowers interact with the world. Planting a flower over some podzol will add a small delay before it can interact with dropped items, allowing for a kind of priority system. And planting a flower on mycelium will create an even bigger delay. The system also extends to floating flowers. All of these here are the floating flowers. So if you want to use a floating flower, you can basically put some dirt with a pasture seed and a glimmering magenta flower, for example. And a pasture seed is grass into a mana pool, which gets you that. And these are actually really pretty. They're pretty much just used for decoration, but they are like this. And you can actually get the glimmering ones again, so you can use them as light sources. And they are really, really pretty as a way of lighting up your base. So again, back to here. The system also extends to floating flowers via the use of boreal seeds and infestation spores. And given 2 flowers within the same, or no, delay, a generating flower, like the endo flame, will pick up an item before a functional one, like the hopperhock. So you can have 2 flowers of the same type. It's a secret to everyone. So this is a really cool way of having a priority system if you're using different kinds of flowers with each other. But let's actually get into what ones you can get. Now, there is the agricarnation. And again, when you click on each one in the Lexica Botania, it's going to show you what runes or items you need to using your Petal Apothecary to actually make this flower. The agricarnation is going to use mana from a nearby mana pool to enhance crop growth. So it's going to make your crop growth faster. Then we have the Bella Fawn. Yes, that's really of the reference. This is malevolent. And it's actually going to twist any mana provided to slowly inflict harm in any living beings around it, apart from players. So you can use this as some sort of mob farm. Like they say, every rose has its thorn. That's so cringy. So then we have the Bergamot, and what this is going to do is actually deafen those really annoying cattle sounds, you know, all the mooing, etc. from your mob farms. It's going to get rid of that. It's going to absorb any sound emitted in a close radius around it, converting it into trace amounts of mana and dispersing it harmlessly. Additionally, the horns or drums will not break blocks within its range. Then we have the Bubble. This one is actually really cool. It's going to make a 12 block radius dome of air around itself underwater. So if you're trying to make an underwater base, the bubble is amazing. This is really what you need. It is going to need a constant supply of mana to keep that dome online, remember? So you don't drown. Then we have the Clayconia. This is a very simple one. It moistens nearby sand, turning it into pellets of clay. And it does use a lot of mana, however, but it won't break the bank or pool as it is. The Clayconia is basically your way of looking at a pure daisy, making the stone and the wood, but sand into clay. Then you have the Daffodil. And what is this going to do is it's going to use mana to push any items in front of it forward. So it works like a fan. You can change its orientation using the Wand of the Forest. Then we have the Dreadfawn. This is a slightly more specialized counterpart of the Bellafawn. Instead of all nearby beings, it only harms adult animals. Now, remember, it's only adult animals, meaning that you can use this as a kind of mob farm with passive animals. So if you want to make a cow farm, but you don't want to kill the babies, you want to obviously wait for them to become an adult, this is only going to kill the adults. So the Dreadfawn is a really cool passive mob farm for that. If you are enjoying this tutorial, guys, I do try and go through every detail of a mod in my tutorials. If you are enjoying it, please do click that subscribe button. It really helps me out. I am trying to get to 1,000 subscribers at the moment so I can get partnered here on YouTube and then, grow this channel even more. Yeah, I do try and go into, all of the details to really teach you the entirety of a mod. I know a lot of people like to just do spotlights, etc. I think it's really nice because there's often little bits and details that you might miss, and I like to cover it all. So if you really do like that kind of tutorial, I am the guy for you. I also do stream modded Minecraft here on YouTube. I actually stream Greg Tech New Horizons. I do that often at the weekends and in the evenings UK time. So if you like any of that, again, click subscribe. Anyway, next up we've got the Exoflame. Conversely to its generating counterpart, the Exoflame uses mana to generate heat. Any furnaces near an active Exoflame are fueled and given a speed boost, which is really cool. Then we have the Fallen Canard. This has angelic properties, and it creates an aura of healing, and it is going to be to any players and tamed pets nearby. Then there's the Hussey Dream. This is going to use mana to fuel artificial emotions of anger and revenge, turning them against each other. So it's mind control to mobs in the near vicinity, which is cool. There is the Hopper Hawk, one of my favorites. This is going to pick up items around it, and it is going to put them in adjacent inventories like chests. So it is literally a vacuum hopper. It's amazing. Some more details about that you can go into there. There is the Hyacidus. The Hyacidus conjures it within the bodies of nearby mobs, bringing them to their knees after a wait for a one-hit kill. Then there is the Jaded Aramanthus. This one is going to grow new mystical flowers on soil nearby. So this is literally a flower farm for you. This is amazing. There is the Giulia, and this one is going to keep any nearby animals or monsters at bay, protecting a circular area from entry. Then you have the Labelia. God, these names are starting to get a bit. This one is actually going to pick up name tags dropped on top of it. I don't really know. And it will actually name nearby items and mobs within a 5x5 radius. That's a very interesting one. The Lunium. This one is going to summon items for said adventurers to collect. There's a catch though. Each item is held by a monster protecting it. The monsters will be extra strong, but will drop their precious dungeon loot when killed. Really good for dungeon looting in your own home. You don't have to go anywhere, just like Uber Eats. Then we have the Marimorpheus. This is going to induce metamorphic transformation in nearby stone blocks. They're transformed into one of 8 different types. And I'll let you read the rest of that, but that's basically what it does. And then there's the Medumone, and this one is going to convert mana into a powerful slowing field that halts any nearby non-player entity, so it's slowing mobs. Then there's the Orchid. This will actually synthesize ores from nearby stone blocks. Then we have the Orchid Ignum, which is going to create raw ores from mana and stone. This is going to create ores of the Nether variety. So same as the Orchid, but Nether variety. The Polydisiac, kind of like an aphrodisiac. This is going to use mana to feed nearby food items on the ground, like wheat and carrots, to animals within range, putting them in the mood. That's right. So when you think about using the Bellathorn and those flowers, and then using the Polydiciac, etc., you can have a fully fledged animal breeding, killing, slaughtering, a whole farm all in one. And then there is the Ranuncarpus. This is going to be able to pick up nearby placeable items and place them within a large radius around itself. This is a really cool flower as well. There's lots of ways you could use that. Then there's the Solagnolia. This is the ring of magnetization is quite a handy tool for diggers or collectors. However, it can also pick up unwanted items, disrupting automation setups in the process. The Solagnolia disrupts the ring's field of effect and prevents any items in its range from being pulled towards a ring bearer. So if you have the ring on, which is basically a magnetization tool, if you're near this flower, it's going to stop you from doing that. So if you really love having that magnetization, but you have a certain mob farm or something, or there's just crap everywhere, and you're like, oh my god, like I don't want to keep picking up this up, this is going to stop that in the nearby vicinity. Then we have the then we have the Spectranthemum, and this is long distance item transport. Basically, if a Daphomil, which remember pushes something in a certain direction, just won't cut it, then you can use the Spectranthemum to use mana to warp the fabric of reality, and it'll teleport them elsewhere in the world. Note that mana containing items interfere with the warp and can't be teleported. The cost also scales with teleported distance. Single items can go over 2,000 blocks, but that is obviously going to be an absolutely enormous drain on your mana pools. So to actually get the destination, you guessed it, going to want to bind them with your Wand of the Forest. Now, this is amazing if you can actually get the mana to keep up with it. Then there's the Tangleberry, and this is a flower that, for a small mana drain, will keep any nearby animals or monsters within a circular ward, preventing them from getting out. So remember, there was the other one that keeps them out. This one keeps them in. Then we have the Tiger's Eye. This is going to exploit the fact that creepers are terrified of cats. It emits a feline aura to petrify nearby creepers. Now, if anyone watches my live streams, you know I need this one in my base at all times. And as a side effect, it also makes them flee nearby players as well. And last but not least is the Vinculotus. And what this one is going to do is it's actually going to hijack the powers of Enderman in a very large area around it, so that when an Enderman attempts a teleport, it is actually going to be forced to the location of the Vinculotus, meaning that basically you can keep Enderman where you want them in a farm. Now remember, this is going to work in all different dimensions, so you could take this to the end and use it in your Enderman farm. It's going to be really cool. They won't be able to escape. So everyone, that is it for part 1 of this series, which you should now know how to find and utilize flowers using the flower pouch and finding them in the world, and how to farm them, how to generate mana using generating flora, how to use that mana using functional flora, how to transport it around using the mana spreaders, how to store it with the mana pool, getting your Wand of the Forest set up, and also making runes with the runic altar, and also using catalysts with the mana pool. In part 2 of this series, we're going to be going into more complex ways of utilizing mana. We're going to look at in more depth the mana spreaders and using lenses on them. We're going to look at tools and apparatus of Botania and all of the cool things that you can use with that. So I really hope you enjoyed this video. I hope that you enjoyed the detail of it and that it wasn't, too detailed, or if there's anything I've missed. If there is anything I've missed, though, do let me know in the comments below. And again, I actually run a huge modded Minecraft Discord community, and at the time of filming this, we're nearly 1,700 people at the time of filming this. And we also run 10 modded Minecraft servers that you are all free to join if you're watching. So click that Discord button down below and don't forget to subscribe. Thanks, guys. I will see you next week for part 2.